Hi everybody, my name is Stephanie and I'm the founder and creator of Over by the Moon, which is primarily a candle decor small business. However, I do dabble in some concrete home decor and some concrete resin home decor. However, in today's video, I will be showing you how I create two of the most popular pillars that are currently available in my Etsy shop, and that is the rope candle and the thick woven candle. That's next. So of course we are starting out with parchment paper, followed by the pouring pitcher and a scale for measuring your wax. And speaking of wax, you can either choose to use a single wax or a wax blend. I personally prefer a beeswax and soy wax blended combo at a 50% ratio. Next we have the wick and the scissors, because of course you can't have a candle without a wick. Then we have the wick bar and the temperature gun. Of course you need molds to pour your wax into. And then you need something to melt the wax. So you have the option of the wax melter, or you can use the double boil method. Either one works fine. Next, you have the heat gun to smooth out any imperfections. And lastly, you have a stirring utensil, paper towels, and a wick needle. But first things first, we get our pitcher and place that on the scale, turn it on, and then still at 0. So I am actually measuring out 2 ropes and 2 thick wovens because I am making teacher appreciation gifts. So this is a dual purpose video. So what I'm gonna do, so because I use a wax blend and I use it at a 50% ratio, I am doing half and half. So if this mold holds 6.4 ounces of wax total, I will divide that in 2. And so 6.4 divided by 2 is 3.2. So it will be 3.2 ounces of soy wax and 3.2 ounces of beeswax. So beeswax first. So here I am measuring out the soy wax that I'm placing directly on top of the beeswax. And once I have that all measured out, it will then be time to put it in the wax melter. And the reason I am using the wax melter for this project is because of the amount of wax total. Since I am making 4 candles, it's easier actually to use the wax melter than the double boil method. $15.8, spot on. So my wax is getting ready to go into the melting pot. And just a word of caution when it comes to selecting your wax, you want to make sure that you are selecting a wax or wax blend that is capable of creating pillars. For instance, I know there are a lot of soy waxes on the market. However, you have to make sure that you pick a soy wax that is specifically designed to create pillars. If not, then your finished product will be anything but a pillar, to put it lightly. So while we are waiting for that wax to melt down in the wax melter, I am going to prepare the molds that we're using for this project. And I'm showing you my needle that I use to thread the wick through the molds. And I'm also showing you that I have 2 different size wicks for this project. So the white mold takes a thinner wick and the pink mold takes a thicker wick because the candle it produces is slightly thicker. And I don't know if you can see the subtle difference in thickness there, but there is a very subtle one that does make a difference in the actual burn quality of the candle. So I'm going to start off with the white rope mold, and then I'm going to thread the wick through that little space there, right through there. pull it through, and then locate the center of the mold. But since this is a mold that I have used prior on previous projects, I already know what the center is. So it's just a matter of locating the existing hole and then just pushing it through there. I will note that some molds are easier to thread from the inside out rather than from the outside in. And for me, this is one of those instances where it's actually easier to thread from the inside out. And then I don't need all that excess wick hanging out, so I pull some back to my liking. And then I leave a little extra hanging out on the back there, on the top, I should say, because I use that extra to stir out any air bubbles that may be present once the wax is poured into the mold. Take a trim right there, and then that one is done. You can see I'm demonstrating how we're going to stir those air bubbles out. All right, so we're setting that wick aside, and then moving on to our pink mold. We're getting out the thicker wick, and we're going to do the same process, which is thread that through the space at the top of the needle. And I think I was highlighting here how some thicknesses can be a little more difficult to thread through the space, but this one's not so bad. And again, I've used this mold a lot of times, as you can see. So I'm just going to thread that through, pull it in, and then pull that back out because obviously I don't need that much hanging out. Pull, pull. And this is also a good illustration of what I mean from going from the outside versus going from the inside. The rope, we went from the inside and pulled through. And then for the thick woven, we went from the outside and pulled through. So that's two different ways of how you can thread the wick through your mold. All right, now we wait for the wax. Okay, so the wax has fully melted, and now it is time to pour it in our pitcher. And this does come with a spigot, but I like to pour directly from the pot without using the spigot because it doesn't drain out completely from the spigot. All right. There's still a little bit left. Let's see. And see, this is why we keep the parchment paper down. Of course, you can also get these little silicone trivets or trivets, however you pronounce that. And still a little bit more, but I might just have to let that stay in there. Okay, so let's check the temperature. And this is currently 260 degrees. So that's way too hot to pour at the moment. Now, since I do a combination wax of soy and bee, I know beeswax you can pour a little hotter in like the 180 range, 175, 180. And soy wax, at least the soy wax, I use just regular container soy wax. So that's 464 soy wax. I know you're supposed to pour that at a cooler temperature at like 135-ish, but because it is cut with the beeswax, I tend to pour actually a little hotter than beeswax because what I think happens is that soy wax cools it off faster than what, if it was just plain beeswax. So I pour a little hotter than the average beeswax temperature. I finally reached the temperature that I need the wax to be in order to pour it into the molds. And so I'm going to start off with the heavier candle, which in this case is the thick woven. And by heavier, I mean the candle that holds the most ounces of wax. So the thick woven mold holds about 9.5 ounces of wax, maybe just a little shy of that. And so I'm going to start off pouring into the heavier candles, the heavier molds first, before I move on to the smaller ones, because I always want to make sure that I have enough wax to take care of both of the bigger candles. And then that way, when it comes to the smaller candles, since these candles are just plain and not scented, I can always melt down wax if needed to make sure that I get a complete candle in the end. So as you can see, I've got just about all of the molds filled with wax. I'm working on the last one here, and then I'm going to go back and maybe top off a few that seem like they have a little space at the top. But what's going to end up happening, especially with the rope candles, is that as they cool, they tend to shrink in on themselves. And so what you'll have to do is do a second pour towards the end to make sure that you have that nice, complete candle look at the bottom, which, as you know, as we make them, it's really the top of the candle as we pour the wax in. But once we take out the mold and flip it over, it will be the bottom. And so I will set that excess wax aside and get ready to start tapping out all of the air bubbles that may be present inside the molds. Okay, so now we want to make sure that we get all of our potential air bubbles out. And this is when we want to do the gentle taps and the stirring. Gentle taps, gentle taps, and the stirring. There we go. Gentle taps and the stirring. Gentle taps. All right. Tap. Tap. All right. Now, I will use the metal wick bars for the thick woven. You can see, real easy to lock that in there. Same thing over here. Really easy to just stick that through there, and it keeps the wick taut or tight. Popsicle sticks, not so much. You have to kind of, I know a lot of other candle makers will twist this around like pencils. I don't do that, which is why I prefer the metal ones. But at least this keeps your wick centered, even though it might not be as taut as or as tight as the metal ones. But at least your wicks will be centered. And now we play the waiting game, where we wait for these guys to cool over a period of time. Now that's going to vary by wax, but for my beeswax and soy wax combination, these normally take about 5 to 6 hours. So now we wait. All right, so you can see that we have pretty much cooled, not all the way, but it's got that nice white color, which is how you know that wax is cool or in the process of cooling. It will turn white from that yellowish melted liquid color. And as you can see, I could still probably pour a little bit more at least in these first 3, just to give it a nice full look to the rim. So that's what we'll be doing. And so now I've got the double boiler out to reheat the wax that's currently in the pot. You can see the leftover wax. We want to melt that down to top off these candles. So I've got the leftover wax heating up on the double boiler. And while that's heating up, it's almost at the desired temperature I'm looking for, which is basically the temperature that I poured the initial pour. So now I'm going to take my heat gun, and then I'm going to melt this down a little bit, to melt down the top a little bit, and then pour the hot wax in there. So what it does is it helps it to not congeal, but it helps it to blend better. So you won't have like a weird delineation line of where it was hot and cold, if that makes any sense, which it probably doesn't. Just trust me. Melt this down a little bit. Same thing for this one. Same thing for this one. Then take your hot wax that you had on the boiler. That's good. Make sure you check your temperature. I'm at the 192 mark. And now I'm just gonna pour to top it off a little bit. All right, that one. Pour a little bit in here. That, and then a little bit here for that. All right, you can see I still have a little left that I probably won't need. And so I'll save that. Either I will clean it out, or you could save it for another set of candles if you're gonna make one directly after making these. All right, guys, so it's been about 6-7 hours since we made these candles. And so I'm gonna check the temperature. Honestly, they could probably sit overnight, but in the name of speed, I'm gonna demold them now. And so what I like to do is just go ahead and cut the bottoms there. All right, you can dispose of those. And then because I have longer nails, I wear gloves so that I don't nick any of the candles as I get them out of their molds. All right, we'll set those aside and start off with our ropes. So as you can see, this is why people like silicone molds. It's very easy to use, very flexible. Just gently pull away and then gently slide your candle out. Voila, that's done. And then if you have a little jaggedness there, you just do this to smooth it out. Just kind of wiggle it along the parchment paper and that will give you the smoother edges. And then snip. All right, there's one candle. And now let's do one of the thick wovens. So I like to pull just to separate the candle from the mold because it makes it a little easier to pull out. And then just push it on out like so. Voila. So now we have our thick woven candle and our rope candle. And these are the results. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below, and let me know if you would like to see more videos on how I make my candles that are in my current collections on Etsy. And that will do it for today. And until the next video, I hope you have a great one.